GarageBand for iOS has a great loop library and you can use any of them in your songs. You can change the tempo and the key, but can you make your own loops up using your guitar and bass and drums or anything that you've got hanging around your studio? Well, yes, you can, and you can change the tempo and the pitch of them. Let's have a look. I have a file open on GarageBand here. I've got some drums at 120 beats per minute and it goes a bit like this. Fine. Now I want to record a couple of disco loops. I've done lots of these online. If you look at my Bandcamp on the address below, you can see an awful lot of loops that I've recorded. I've recorded them on all 12 keys, and it will become apparent with this demonstration as to why I've recorded in lots of keys. But you can do this on GarageBand. You can record a loop, play it back at any other speed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some guitar down first, and I'm just going to play a rhythm. Now, I've got 8 bars here on GarageBand, but I'm actually going to record only 2 bars. So I'm going to leave 2 bars at the beginning so I can listen to the drums, play my 2 bars, or maybe 4, because then I can choose a 2-bar loop, and then finish before it gets to the end of the 8-bar loop. Now this relies, when you're doing a loop like this, it relies on the timing to make sure that when you do slow the tempo down, it actually makes a bit of sense. But that's the guitar, and then I'll just stick a bass line down with that as well, so that we can have a bass loop and a guitar loop. So if I just go back to my window, I've got a bass amp set up here ready to go, and I'm going to follow that guitar line with a bit of bass. Let's make sure my monitor's on. There we go. Okay, here we go. Okay, now I've got to make sure that my audio files also begin exactly in the right place. So there's my recording done, and I'm just going to go back to the GarageBand main screen and have a little look to check that my timing is all up there. So bar 3 is where I started, so I'm going to zoom in all the way until it says snap to grid off, so that I can see that things start in the right place, and I'm quite lucky that it did. So I'm going to split that track there. I'm going to split that track there. So this is at bar 3. Don't forget I left those 2 bars of silence. I'm going to get rid of the bit that came before it in both tracks. And then I'm going to go to bar 5 and just verify that guitar's a little bit honky there, but there's something we can do about that in a minute. The bass line, however, is fine, because you can see at bar 5 it actually starts just after the bar line, which is what you want. You don't want something that's really too close, otherwise you get a click. Now I'm going to just quickly check at bar 7 as well. In order to do this, in order to actually split at bar 7, you would have to return to the screen to allow the cursor to go exactly in the right place. Snap to grid off, you might cut at 6.999, and you don't want that, because that will become apparent when you try and loop it. Delete that, and I'm going to split that there as well, and delete that. Now there is a little problem with the guitar at bar 5, in that that chord comes in slightly early. So I'm going to actually just address that. I'm going to just go slightly before, split, and then split the other side of the chord. And then I'm actually going to just move this part to bar 5. You can check this as well if you want to. You can actually move an individual part. You can actually move the individual part a little bit more. Oh, now this is the only trouble, of course, is that if you end up slicing away, I'm just going to click undo so that I can just address that. There we go. So there it is at the beginning of bar 5. just have a look at snap to grid off, and that's fine. If we go to bar 5, you can see that my guitar chord is now aligned. But we've got to make sure that the previous guitar part is 2 bars long because I've cut it off slightly. So that means that I've got to go here and actually just drag to bar 5. There we go. Now you can then loop these 2 bars. So I'm going to take these and my little part away that I had there. I'm going to move those away to bar 7. You can, if you want a bit more editing space, just increase the 8 bars to perhaps 10, which means that you can move these maybe a bar or so and then test whether this loop works. So I'm going to copy that, and then at bar 5, notice how I drag the cursor back and forth just to make sure that it's at the right place. Paste that and let's have a listen. Okay, leaving aside those other 2 bars, in fact I will just listen to them to make sure that guitar works with that little split there. That most certainly doesn't work because it's actually dragged it all to the wrong place. I'll just make sure it's at the bar line. There we go. Don't know if that's going to work. I'll tell you what, now I know this loop works, I'm going to move it back a bar and then move these so that they come to the beginning of bar 7. Now the only trouble with this at the moment is because I dragged one of the files, it thinks that the guitar begins, that larger bit should begin at bar 7 when it's not, it's the smaller bit. So if you use the bass line to drag that, you won't, it'll then drag everything properly. So if I just now get all of this, copy and then paste at bar 9, let's see what happens with that. Okay, that's fine. I'm quite lucky with that. Now, of course, things like GarageBand do have this software that prevents little glitches happening at the beginning and end of each particular recording. It's called snap to 0, and actually it's a really handy feature so that you can most of the time get away with something that's just not quite there. Now, I want to export this guitar part because I'm quite happy with these 2 parts now. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this. So I know that loop works. I'm going to get rid of the other loop as well, plus the tiny little bit that appeared here. There we go. Delete that and just have a little look at this. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, now when you come to time stretch this, it will do the little bit with the larger part afterwards, that little bit of guitar that I edited. It will actually allow you to do this. That's pretty cool. So let's say I'm going to change the tempo to maybe 112 or something significant. Now, at the moment, you can see that my bass and guitar have stayed the same. That is, they're now shorter because they're faster. They're still 120. So all I need to do is go to Settings, follow tempo and pitch, and it then time stretches this. How cool is that? Let's have a listen and see if it still works. That's not too bad. I'm just going to mute the drum kit and I'll use the metronome so that we can keep an eye on where the beats are. Now you can hear a little bit of warbling and rumbling in there. Now actually it works better if you speed things up, but if you have percussive things like those guitar chords, they will suffer less than the bass. But if I now speed the tempo up a bit, now of course when you slow the tempo down, what GarageBand is having to do is to go, okay, well right, put something in there, just to make the whole thing longer. So it ends up being a bit of a problem, whereas if you speed something up, it is the other way. So actually we got tempo of 126 now, and then we go to settings and follow tempo and pitch. Notice it's done it automatically because that switch was on. It's all right. Now, that guitar part, because I had the little tiny little bit there, that's turning into a problem now. That means that we've got to set, if we go to 126 for example, I have to do each of these parts separately. Notice that bit has gone. Where's it gone? Well, the answer is it's underneath the other one. Now this is going to be a problem, because if I move that here, if I undo that, you've got this problem. So the way around this is to get the small part and drag it to a known part, like so snap to grid isn't on. So drag it to a beat, and then you can do that. So if we go now 126, you can see then that the original small guitar part is still there. And if we go to follow tempo and pitch, and then follow tempo and pitch, follow tempo and pitch, and then drag this bit back to the beginning of that bar, lo and behold, we will find our intact guitar. Now, how are you going to export these loops? Well, what I should have done really was to export this one first. But if I go to My Songs, I'm going to rename this first, because you can get into a right pickle if you don't rename your stuff. So G minor disco, for example. And then I'm going to duplicate this. Duplicate this track so that I can work on other things. So G minor disco 2, I'm going to rename, G minor disco 2, because actually I want to deal with the first riff first and the second riff afterwards. So I'm going to get rid of this now, keep the other two parts like that, and then I'm going to make this overall a 2-bar loop, which means that now it'll play as a continuous. Follow tempo and pitch, I forgot. Now, of course, we've got the other bits of the file there, so I should have been a little bit more conscientious with my files before I... Okay, so I'm happy with that now. Now, how are we going to store these loops? Well, if I go to the guitar part first, for example, it's a little bit honky, but it's okay, it's fine. Now what you can do with this is you can go to your My Songs and you can save this, or you can share it as a file, as a song if you will. And then you can then save that to files, and then you have to go into files and change the name of it so it's G minor guitar 126. Always come up with a naming convention. There we go. And then when you go back into, when you go to files, you should find that there is a G minor guitar somewhere. Date, G minor disco, should have saved by date. And there we are. So if I go to this now and go to rename, G minor disco guitar chords. And there you are. There's your loops, which you can then now bring in from the Files app, from the GarageBand file transfer. So you can do this. You can record stuff, you can make it follow the key and the pitch. Now, I didn't change the key. Let's go back in and I'll explain why it was a little bit sort of honky to do this. Now, if I go back, if I try and follow the song key now, let's, instead of the key, I'm going to actually just transpose the guitar part, semitone transposition. Let's go up 2 semitones and see what happens with that. Now that bass line, sorry, the guitar bass line rather, it's having to do an awful lot of analysis, and as you can hear, it doesn't sound very good. if you can play a riff in one place on your bass or guitar, you can play it in all other 11 positions. Just do that. It's a bit laborious, but if you've got loops that you want to use in your songs as a theme on GarageBand, this is the way to do it.